What's going on? This is Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. We are back at it once again, and we finally have returned back to Queens, arguably the greatest borough on earth. So happy to be here at Fifth Hammer. Perry, how you doing?
I mean, I'm still going to rep Brooklyn, but I have been here twice because I stopped up for the McKellar opening the other day.
Very
so
nice.
Definitely not sad about having some great beers in Queens.
Well, yeah, and we're in Long Island City, and we have two very special guests with us here today. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
This is Chris Cuzme.
And Dave Scharfstein.
Guys, thanks so much for hosting Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. Thanks for hopping on the show. Let's get right into it. So tell us a little bit about the name. I understand there's a link to the Greek philosopher Pythagoras, but tell us about the inspiration. Why Fifth Hammer?
Yeah, we didn't say that part. Yeah, this is Chris Cuzme of Fifth Hammer Brewing Company, and that's Dave of Fifth Hammer Brewing Company. And Fifth Hammer is... Dave and I, it is kind of a long story, but it's a fun one, I think.
We got time.
It starts with the beginning of Dave and my relationship, where we were really trying to figure out what name we wanted. And there were things that he liked that I didn't like, and things I liked he didn't like, and we did a poll and all these things. And then and there are things we both loved, and that all these names are fucking taken already. So I didn't find any success there. Get to the part where I'm in a car and I'm listening to a podcast. Called Benjamin Walker's Theory of Everything, and he had a guest on that wrote a book called Fifth Hammer, and it's premised. He was a philosopher, and it was premised on the story of Pythagoras. That Pythagoras was credited for a great many things. He was a mathematician, a philosopher, an astronomer, and he was also credited for discovering the mathematical relationship between musical notes. And the story goes that he got interested in this because he was walking by a blacksmith or a forge, and he heard this sound. He's like, "What is that sound? It's amazing. It's beautiful. I got to know what that is." He walked inside the forge, and these people were hammering on an anvil. There were hammers on the anvil. 4 of the hammers that hammering on the anvil were harmonious with one another. That's what Pythagoras fell in love with and wanted to take home and be concerned with and discover this relationship between those hammers, why they sounded so good together. But the 5th hammer was discordant and doing its own thing. It was outside the realm of conventional harmony, but it still struck as a hammer. It still made its own melody, and the 5th hammer is always, a 4th hammer, and if you give it different 4 hammers. Anyway, 5th hammer represents individuality to us, and that story struck with me being a musician. So I immediately called Dave, like, "Dave, what do you think about the name Fifth Hammer?" He's like, "I love it. It sounds so cool. It's great. What does it mean?" And I went through this story, and he's like, "Well, you're fucking telling that story."
Filled with regret.
Now you're like, "I've heard this story 1,000 times."
I only knew how long the underlying story was.
No, but I mean,
probably would have objected.
I'm going to go on though. I am going to go to the extreme part of this, where there is a chapter 2 to this, insofar as like Pythagoras being he had a cult following for 1,000 years, and he believed that you could explain the universe through mathematics, and that the divine harmony was how God, however you define it, put us all in with put all the planets and the stars together. In the mathematical relationship between everything was the divine harmony, and in order to explain the universe through mathematics, it was finite, and so it was finite. Then 1,000 years later, after the cult following things, Kant and Kepler came around, and they're like, "No, the universe is not finite. There's a 5th hammer out there, and it represents everything else." So 5th hammer represents individuality with regard to the hammers and infinite possibility with regard to the universe. And that's kind of why that guy, Dan, forgive me, I forget his name, wrote this book on the philosophy and the theories of the universe and kind of going on these things. But mostly Dave likes the name. Yeah. Because it sounds cool.
It does. Honestly, I can honestly say that's probably the most interesting backstory of a brewery name that I've ever heard. That's the most in-depth back. I mean, you guys really, really went deep into it. That's
in-depth for sure.
In-depth for sure.
Interesting.
Cool.
You said we could talk as long as we want on this
Absolutely.
podcast, so I am. But in generally, for the 30-second clips, Fifth Hammer represents individuality and infinite possibility based on the lore of Pythagoras, and that's the button stop.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, I'll ask this question to you both. How did you guys originally get into craft beer, and do you recall if there was a specific beer or beer style that really turned you on to craft?
I was always casually into beer, and then I spent a semester in Belgium and became slightly more than casually into beer. Just started to like really appreciate what good beer was, and always, have been a very avid consumer of beer, not such a brewer. But and so when I left my prior life, I was looking to open a craft beer bar serving only local craft beer, and through that process I ended up meeting Chris. He was sort of at a transitional point too, and we decided to just go all in and and try to do something together. Kind of warped into a different answer there, but yeah, that was it for me.
The entry for craft beer for me kind of I think was I went to college in New Jersey. One of the trumpet players I played with, still to this day, Dan Sears. I told him I was having a birthday party and I was going to get myself a keg of whatever was around. I was like, you can't just get any keg. You got to get something really, something good. And so we ended up getting a Stout's Honey Porter. I don't think they make it anymore, but Carroll Stout. They have a really great brewery in Pennsylvania, in Pottstown. Man, I was like, whoa, I'm never going to not do this. There's so much flavor in this, and I wasn't really paying attention to that at the time. But then from then on, it was absolute love, and I'd go out and seek the good beer. This is, mind you, not my 21st birthday. It was a little earlier than that. So where I could I'd make the choices. I'd made the choices. But I got my first homebrew kit in early 2001, and then fell down the rabbit hole with that, paying it a lot more attention to flavor and flavor development, and kind of like just deconstructing flavors of all kinds through culinary aspects, and because it all falls into play and into brewing, and executing recipes to me reminds me a lot of like executing melodies from concept, and so the parallel between music and beer and making beer is heavy to me.
Right. The creativity, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extension. It's another vocation. It's another means of expression through a different sensory stimulation receptor point, whatever.
So was there like a specific? Was that the catalyst, or was there a specific catalyst that got you to think, okay, I want to make craft beer my life. I want to make that my profession.
No, that's a little different. That part of the story, like I would definitely I want to make music my profession. Like no, I mean, still to this day, I consider myself a musician before a brewer. But at this point, through this journey, I realize I can't be either or. I have to be both. Like I definitely I'm an accidental pro brewer, I think. I mean, I think that's true. Because I got really into the deconstruction of it. I immediately, in 2001 is when I started homebrewing, and then I went straight to the New York City Home Brewers Guild, and and met some of my best friends, and eventually my wife, and life, and got heavy into it there, became a beer advocate within the city. Didn't really think I wanted to brew professionally necessarily, but I had fun doing it. One of my friends from the New York City Home Brewers Guild started home brewing at the same time as me. He wanted to make it his life, and ended up bidding on a brew house on eBay and winning this bid. And he was like, Cuzme, I got this brew house. I guess we have to do it now. And I was like, yeah, I guess we do. Well, let's do it, because we were just talking in the Blind Tiger late nights to kind of be like, yeah, it'd be fun, it'd be cool. But we ended up opening that brewery in Western Massachusetts called Wandering Star Brewing Company. And as a saxophonist first, I didn't want to move up there. That left me to being sales and marketing for New York City. For the brewery, I'd go up there and brew with him a little bit here and there. But I realized really quickly on how much work it is to brew, dude. It's no fun doing the work. There's that meme out there that says everybody wants to be a brewer until they have to do brewer shit. And that is true. For the most part, because I mean it is dirty. It's very labor intensive and very low paying, and margins aren't awesome until these laws have changed. And we talked about the taproom things for New York later. Anyway, there's a long way of getting to the part where I was like, okay, well maybe I don't want to be a brewer, especially if. So we were brewing mostly my friend Chris's recipes for Wandering Star. So that's not for me. I'm gonna make all the parallels to music because it's the language I speak, right?
Sure.
So I'm a jazz musician. I love improvising. I love getting things from my concept to mine, or to existence. And brewing someone else's recipe is like playing music from a page, and or not being the composer. And while I like sonic architecture and I love being in command of my instrument and being able to execute things, it's really freedom of expression that I'm in love with, and that's why I want to be a.
By the way, is Sonic Architecture used as a beer name yet?
Not yet.
Not, I'm
Yeah, I was about to say, that sounds
calling it right here on this
That is a great
podcast.
beer name.
If it's not in use yet,
Done and done.
It's a
got it.
BTBT exclusive.
Yeah.
That's
Let's do it.
That's a great
Let's
name,
do it.
actually. Sonic Architecture. I like
Really
that.
hard to find 2 words that aren't already a beer
beer,
name.
right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
on Untapped and figure that out.
I apologize for being so loquacious in this story, but I,
No,
you
this
know,
is great.
But this is the part. So I realized I didn't want to do that. So I stayed and just like kept my day gig. I kept my focus on my day gig kind of was doing temp work at a finance company, supporting my music and beer habit. I went out on a couple tours with the beer or with the saxophone playing. Started New York City degustation advisory team with my now wife, hosting beer and food pairings. I helped start New York City Craft Beer Week. And then through all this advocacy and Get Real Productions, we did a bunch of beer festivals, cask festivals that were 120 casks deep, which really awesome. Didn't see that in the city, and you haven't seen one since actually in the city. We all moved on to other things. But out of nowhere, I get this call from Kelly Taylor asking if I knew anybody that wanted to brew for 508 Gastro Brewery in the Lower East Side. He's like, do you know anybody who wants to work part time over at this thing? And at the time I was just in sales and marketing, but I like the brewing side. He's like, so I was like, okay, well, yeah, part time, help out over there. Sure, I can't wait to brew with the brewer there or meet him. I already met him, but I wanted to support it. There was only a couple brew pubs in the city, and he's like, oh no, actually he's gone. This would be yours if you want it. And it's like, okay, well let me check it out. We had just been hit by Sandy. All the fermenters were in the basement, and up 6 feet of water from the East River or from the Hudson. And I went in there anyway. They were really welcoming to me, and they gave me complete freedom to do what I wanted to do ultimately. And it was there that I discovered that actually, yes, this is a vocation. This is really what I want to do. This method of being able to share it with so many people and get feedback and reactions and pair it, especially in a brew pub setting with other foods, and do collaborations with other brewers in the city and home brewers. Like, I just fell in love with it, and that was absolutely 2012 to 2015 was the transitional point for me in my life, being like, I'm no longer just a saxophone player.
So that's when you went from accidentally to accidentally on purpose.
Yeah, that's when I went from accidentally to accidentally on purpose, because I hadn't set my life to go towards it. It was a call because I'd been in the scene and been an advocate and things like that. But once I was hired there, I was like, oh shit just got real. I better go to school and get some things together. So I took myself to the American Brewers Guild in Vermont, a correspondence course, and got the science of brewing pretty heavy in there.
Awesome.
So taking a step back before that, so obviously you're extremely passionate about music. How did you originally get into music?
I saw a commercial when I was 4 years old on TV for like the best of Cannonball Adderley, and it just sounded so cool. It looked so cool. I ran to my mom, who was in the kitchen. I remember this vividly. I remember running up to my mom, who had her back to me, like she was either cooking or doing dishes, and she doesn't do either of those very well. But I remember she was doing it. and I was like, Mom, I want to play saxophone. She was like, not until you're 8 or you're in 4th grade. Or not till you're 10 or you're in 4th grade. And I ended up skipping a couple grades, and I was in 4th grade when I was 8. and so I ended up starting saxophone then. And man, another thing where, I didn't really expect to love it the way I did, but I certainly did. That has driven my life choices for sure.
Wow.
And I joke about it, but it's not that much of a joke. This whole brewing thing is just an elaborate ploy to get a gig. And a captive audience in our tasting room.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
So
right?
every Wednesday,
That's right. Every Wednesday.
come here.
Let's get the plug in. Come on, let's get it in.
You will see this very creative expression that he's referring to.
Yeah, very awesome. So now I'm curious, how did you guys initially meet?
So I was looking to open a craft beer bar, and I had a real estate broker I was trying to find spaces this was my brilliant plan. I was trying to find a space that was already built out as a bar, but was serving mediocre beer. And I was going to not do a lot of construction, which is funny. I understand what we did. And I was going to basically just change the beers on draft, and it was going to be relatively simple conversion, but
Really easy,
right?
Murphy's Law.
But it's this underserved market, which I actually think is true. I think that even though there are a lot more local craft beer bars, there still aren't enough for a city this size. But anyway, that was my plan. And one of the places that my broker brought me to was 508 Gastro Brewery. I loved the beer. I loved it. But then the bartender said something to the effect of like, so isn't it a shame this place was, the lease was snatched up by someone else already? And I was like, looked at my broker because he was kind of behind the ball, obviously. Like,
right.
Someone had already grabbed the lease. And so anyway, I just thought, okay, well, that sucks. But the beer was really good. And then I happened to be having lunch with a friend of mine the next day and telling him how much I liked this place and the beer. And he said, actually, I've met the brewer there. He's a really, really nice guy, and I have his card. Why don't I see if I can dig it up and, why don't you just reach out to him? He obviously knows something about beer, and you're trying to get into that scene. So anyway, he did get the card. Ian Turetsky. Thanks, Ian, if you're listening.
He's a neighborhood
and
bloke.
Ian actually lives in Long Island City.
Oh,
so
look at
there's
that. He's a Queens guy. All right.
Poetic in some way. Anyway, so he gave me, and I reached out to Chris, and I sent him in like just a completely, just a email out of nowhere, saying, hey, we don't know each other, but I loved your beer, and why don't we meet up and
Talk shop.
Sure.
And then we did at Jimmy's, and I remember Chris's then girlfriend, now wife, Mary, was there too, and she went to the bathroom, and he says to me, yeah, she really likes you. She usually thinks people are trying to con me.
So you got the early seal of approval.
That's a good sign.
Well, she was like, you're not going to this meeting alone. I'm going to vet. And like, okay.
That's awesome. So anyway, wow, that really could have went either way.
It could
I
have.
got the Mary seal of approval.
Yeah,
Earlier.
it's good enough for me.
She still doesn't think I'm trying to con him, so that's good.
Yeah.
So I guess the rest is history from there, right?
It's history. After that first night, we had a great time hanging out, and the next day we were like, okay, actually this makes a lot of sense. And I was at the end of 508 Gastro Brewery. I had a couple different job offers on the table. Through this whole journey, I've certainly made a small name for myself here in New York City in the beer community, in small circles and stuff. Meeting Dave was just awesome, and it made it. This is right. This is the best one because this one has the most opportunity for not being under. I mean, it's a partnership. It's me and Dave, and it's not. I'm not under anybody's thumb. Not that I necessarily would be under any other situation, but it definitely there was the most potential for freedom of execution of concepts of all kinds. Both how we're doing the tap room and what we represent as Fifth Hammer in general. It doesn't have any preconceived notions or didn't have any reputations that were developed outside of us, which is great. We have full accountability. We stand behind this entire place and all things.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So I remember being in here a while back, just during the build out, and now to see where it is now. We were talking right before we got on air. I mean, it's amazing to see all the progress that you've made. But I know it was quite the journey from the concept to opening day. Can you talk a little bit about what you went through and kind of the for lack of a better term, the trials and tribulations of kind of envisioning the dream and then actually living it out?
Sure, I think that definitely this is totally crazier than Dave was expecting and didn't expect his journey to go this way. He just stepped away, which is why he's so silent. Otherwise, he'd totally chime in here. We were actually just talking to Dave about how he's glad I got to actually con him into such a big project versus what he originally envisioned, because this is kind of what it is. So Dave and I met in January of 2015. It is now almost April 1st of 2018. We met in January, and then we developed our LLC together as a partnership, basically in a couple weeks. He's good with legal jargon. As a recovering lawyer, he was able to get us a good thing. Goodbye, Joe Kirkhoff. See you later. And then we set off into motion about then looking for a place for a production facility with a tap room versus the bar that he was originally looking at. And I was coming from a 2-barrel system in 508 Gastro Brewery, and he was thinking kind of on that kind of scale. He was thinking small and stuff, but I've been there, done that, and I know how much work it goes into making a single batch of beer. It's the same amount as making a single small batch as a single large batch, and it's an economy of scale kind of thing. You want to reap the best benefits and have something fiscally sustainable in this really tough environment and market with the margins. So I was always convinced that we had to start with at least a 15-barrel system, which is what we ended up doing,
right.
And at least 4 fermenters, which is what we have. 2 of them are double sized. We have 2 30-barrel fermenters, and in order to do that, you need X amount of space. So the whole real estate thing was the hardest part of our journey, I think. It took us a year and a half to find a place that would lend itself to that. I was amenable to, considering other, platforms or kind of ways we were going to deliver this. It all depended on how high the ceilings were, kind of what location we were, whether we'd be lend ourselves more to production and being a regional production brewery versus a place that was all encompassing with a tap room or not. Space was going to determine that, and so we didn't really have a business plan that we have seen executed, because this whole thing. And I'm fine with this because I like improvising. I'm like, okay, we got it. But fly by the seat of our pants. It'll be what it's going to be. It's going to be great because the people involved are great and genuine and are smart. Or like we have to say, you do things wisely when we get there. So we did minimal. We had limited official expectations and are letting the circumstances let the project breathe as it will.
Sure.
Which I think is part of its success. But anyway, we finally found the place a year and a half into it. The challenge of New York City finding places are in large part zoning, because you can't just up and start a brewery anywhere. It has to be zoned right, manufacturing 1, 2, or 3, and MX8. We ended up finding this place. It's M3 zoning, so we were as of right to do this brewery. But we're also we're in one of the largest, fastest growing neighborhoods in America, Long Island City. So we have a lot of people here that can frequent our tap room. So we made sure to have a tap room of 5,000 square feet. We have 2,000 square foot of being a tap room. So in building it out, we had to make sure it was safe and all sorts of things. Dealing with the Department of Buildings was also one of the biggest challenges of opening this thing.
I'm sure.
I mean, every project is unique, so as much as we learn from other brewers in the city, every neighborhood's different and every building has its own challenges. So we were prepared for certain things and we were not prepared for other things, and our architects had never done a brewery before, told us we didn't really have to get inspected for the boiler, and I was like, really, you sure? I've never heard a brewery not have to do that, and I checked on several times. We got to the very fucking end, and they're like, and then we get denied because they didn't schedule a boiler inspection. I'm like, okay, see, I told you, but I didn't want to be right then. That cost us a good solid 2 months, and therefore like almost $50,000. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Just because of that stupid loss. I mean, in the end, we're catching up because the tap room's been really successful, and we're really proud of that. The environment is really, really welcoming for the neighborhood. There's not a place like this in the neighborhood, which is cool. And some people who come in here don't even know we're a brewery, but really love what's going on, and kid friendly, chalk wall, full piano. Saxophonist on Wednesday nights, 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
I hear he's really good.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And you guys are pet friendly too.
Yeah.
I mean,
because we do not serve food, and that keeps us out of the Department of Health. The restrictions with that. This is a tasting room and a production facility. We do let people. We have one of those old school 3-ring binders with delivery menus from the whole neighborhood. So people, you have food? We just send them the delivery menus, and they're like, it's
perfect.
Have them come.
It works out. Yeah.
Or Wi-Fi and seamless, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
After going through all that, all that time, all the hurdles, what does it mean to finally have this location up and running? And not only to be up and running, but also to have it being so well received.
Yeah, I cry a lot these days. I'm not even joking. Like my Mary is like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Like little things happen. Just like the beauty of. I am so appreciative of of that reception, and I feel incredibly lucky to just to get this even close off the ground, but then to get it off the ground and have it supported, and to be able to express myself through the beers I like, being able to create these beers I like, it's insane. What's it like? It's a lot of fucking work. That's true too.
I'm sure.
But it's work I love, and I feel so fortunate to be able to do it. And I'm learning something new every day. There's a learning curve on every system. But yeah, no, I go in that tap room and I see all the people together, and I see the families that are here, and I see baby's first brewery type stuff. I see, we had our dog Halloween costume contest that was just with like neighborhood kids judging it, and I was like, this is just like it's amazing, man. And I don't know, man, just to see people smiling, enjoying their time. That's all we want. But I'm very, very, very serious about the beer, what goes into a beer, about doing it well, off flavors, and I'm very, very concerned with the flavors going on with that. I do want to make beers that are worthy of conversation, but I want an environment where beer doesn't always have to be the conversation. Great beer is a soundtrack to our good time, and I hope that we're doing that here at Fifth Hammer, where you come in here and it's people who want to appreciate the beer can really appreciate the beer and be here for that. But people who want to come here and have a good time, they can come here and do that. It doesn't, it all goes into play. There was a really great quote that I say all the time, but I mean, our job here is to make sure people don't wake up from their dream. When people come here, they're going to escape something else, and they're here. Our job is to not jolt them out of their dream. Like, we want them to have a good time, and if I make a bad beer, that jolts someone out of that. That wakes them up. If a dog bites somebody, that's gonna wake them up. If somebody's playing the wrong music, it's gonna wake them up. If there's anything that's just jarring and unpleasant, so I don't know. We just try and focus on the pleasantries.
Right. No, I love that quote. That's amazing. And I see that when I walked in. I saw Dad holding. In one hand, I couldn't have been more than a 6-month-old baby. The other hand, a Fifth Hammer Teku.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. I mean, and we talk about this all the time on the show, but craft beer is culture,
right?
And it's culture,
absolutely.
It's community, and it brings people together.
Yeah.
And I think this space here is awesome. I think this is, as far as layouts of the breweries that I've been to within the boroughs, I think this is one of the most intriguing layouts, because you do have a lot of space, all things considered, because space is obviously, it's at a premium.
Yeah.
And you guys have great space, beautiful layout, great beers. I really dig the Fifth Hammer vibe. So a little bit more about Fifth Hammer. So how many taps do you guys have?
So we just expanded to 16 taps. So when we started, when we put our plan together for what we were going to do, we were going to start with 20 taps, but we very quickly, for a lot of different things, the project cost more than we needed. We were like, okay, we got to scale everything down. How many do we need to start with? And we ended up going with an 8-tap tower in the very beginning, and then just a month and a half ago, we doubled that up to be 16 taps in total. One of them is a dedicated cider line for the most part. As summer nears, we may or may not start doing, or at least have the option of doing, some kegged white wine, local white wine, farm license, New York State farm license white wine. Because that's one thing we haven't mentioned, actually. I have a New York State farm license, brewery license, as well as a New York State production brewing license, which allows us to sell New York State farm license cider, mead, wine, and liquor. And so this room can function as a bar, but celebrating New York State stuff. So there's something for everybody, and which we like.
Yep.
But right now, I've got 15 lines that could be my own, because I don't make cider yet. But I think I only have 12. Well, sort of, not really. I mean, I've been saying it from the beginning. Right. With the New York State farm license, I'm allowed to make cider using New York State apples. I think that my ability to get them all the time is not always going to be there. But also, like, my focus is not entirely there. Like, our neighbor Jahil Maplestone of Descendant
right.
makes really great cider,
Yes,
and
it does.
it certainly fits the need for here. And I'm satisfied drinking it and not making it. I mean, I like making cider; it's fun. But I can do that at home on a 5-gallon system and do that for me.
Right.
Like, the time here, I think, needs to be very focused on beer, or at least my time here. Until I have more support in the brew house, my time needs to be focused on straight up beers and diversity with that. So 15 taps we can be serving here. I do have a kegerator or two that may come out once in a while. We might do some Cuzette stuff that we've done, or like some stuff from my wife's speed brewing book, like the jasmine green tea spritzer for summer. Like basically it's champagne, yeast, water, cane sugar, and jasmine green tea. I strongly advise anybody to try homebrewing that. It's awesome.
Oh,
so
wow.
so crushable.
Now, is that from Cuzette Libations?
Well, we wanted to do that for Cuzette Libations, but we don't have a facility for Cuzette Libations. We'll do some things under here.
Mm-hmm.
Up there are the fermenters that I used to use at 508 Gastro Brewery. That's what I brewed into there, those 2-barrel plastic conicals. And so we are going to do a subset series here at some point. But right now, the focus is off the hammer all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our next focus, though, too, is also we want more wood, and we want to do some sour and some aging stuff here. And we started very, very basic from our value engineering and having to strip down like a lot of the stuff that because of budget purposes.
Sure.
But now that we're up and running, we can start doing things like or get those things.
Throw
But
stuff in a
first,
barrel
like when
and
you're
wait.
looking over there, we just redid this whole floor. So like
That's right.
there are basic needs that we still are getting.
Well, yeah.
that need to be.
You got to do the basics first.
Yeah.
Get them
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
way. Right,
Literally
right.
have somewhere to stand before you can
Yeah,
crawl
exactly.
before you walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And now there's, from what I understand, there's a story behind your tap handles too, right?
Yes. So when Dave and I finally decided on a name, we were looking for a place for like a year and a half. But about 6 months into that, or maybe 4 months into that, I got a call from Kelly Taylor of Greenpoint Beer Works / Kelso Brewing Company, and he's like, "Hey, you know anybody?" He used to joke that I was his HR guy, and he would always get different homebrewers to be hired at Greenpoint Beer Works from me. And he was like, "Hey, do you know anybody that wants to come work there?" I was like, "Well, actually, I could really use some scratch right now because we're not really finding a place very fast. But know that I would only be able to be there, in part time. I got to go look at these places, all that stuff." Anyways, started working there, and then we really didn't find a place. So instead of just being 1 day a week, it turned into like a couple days a week, and then it turned into like I was there full time while Dave and I were looking at these other places, and then I went from from keg cleaning and being barrel guy all the way up to being like one of the last brewers at Greenpoint Beer Works, which was a great intermediary step for me, going from that 2 barrels to brewing on that 30-barrel system with 3 turns a day and into 20,000 barrels a year at the end of that. And anyway, I started, once we discovered our name in the middle of that stint while I was working there full-time-ish with the option to leave whenever we had to go look at a space, I started dedicating a portion of my paycheck to buying lots of hammers on eBay. And so I would basically weekly, I'd put bids in on eBay, and I've been infatuated with hammers now. They're so hip, and the history of vintage hammers and how their own life and what they've built, what they've done. Why are these people selling them on eBay? And I have this now I have this hammer collection that's 300 deep right now.
Wow.
It's insane. It was kind of funny at first. These packages started arriving at the house, and I live in a 4th floor walk up in Brooklyn. And my wife Mary would bring the packages up, and then after Ross, she's like, "These are so fucking heavy. What is in these?" She finally realized they were hammers. She's like, "Fuck this! You're bringing your own packages upstairs." So I had to bring my own heavy packages because sometimes they come 12 deep. Anyway, so going back to the tap handles, so we are reappropriating a lot of hammers from my collection to be our tap handles, and I have to be very selective because sometimes they're a little too top heavy. When we first opened, they were all hammers of mine, but we were busier than we expected to be, and they really jerked the taps around. So I have a friend now taking them and making them a little bit more sturdy and epoxying the connections in a better way. Like I said, that they'll be more sustainable. So only a couple of them are officially hammers right now, but that should be remedied in approximately a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Okay. All right.
Do you have any sledgehammers?
I do have some sledgehammers.
'Cause I feel like that would be a nice theme for a barley wine festival.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. your hours of operation. What days? You guys are open every day of the week, right?
We're open every day of the week. We want to be, like you said, we want beer is this community thing, and we want to be a meeting place for the neighborhood and a sense of community here. And so we're open a lot on the weekends, like noon to 1 a.m. on Saturday, noon to 10 p.m. on Sundays. On Monday, Tuesday, we are open 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. On Wednesday, we're open 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., which usually gets stretched a little bit. And then Thursdays, we're 4 to midnight. And Friday, we're 3. We open a little earlier on Friday, 3 o'clock, and we're open till 1 on Friday.
Okay, right on. And I know, obviously, operating brewery, huge job, huge, time suck. And I know that, you in the past several years, you've been very active in the craft beer scene. I mean, you were involved New York City Homebrewers Guild, the Malted Barley Appreciation Society, your own podcast, Ferment About It.
Yeah.
So, and we can get into that a little bit too. But so, how much time do you have for the other things now these days?
What are the other things? So I'm hosting the Northeast Regionals for the National Homebrew Competition.
Yes.
We're excited about that. That's what those boxes over there are. We got about 800 entries, and
wow.
But that's going to be here on premise. And the other things to me is the music and spending time with Mary. But Mary and I are beer heads and foodies. So, when it's funny, when we have a night off, what do? We go on a Long Island City beer crawl, or like we go to another brewery that to a tap room that we haven't been able to go to because we've been stuck here. Or we'll do this is Queens. You have the whole world in Queens. It's awesome. It's amazing. So we're doing a lot of kind of culinary expeditions here in Queens. I had to just cancel one. We were supposed to go on a tour with Joe DiStefano to Chinatown, Flushing on Saturday. But I need to fill in here.
Joe Shanghai makes great dumplings.
Yeah.
Great dumplings.
Yeah, so they got the Momo Dumpling Festival, Momo Crawl every year too, and so I try and get my beer in there too. So like this year, our beer was on the trolleys for the Momo Crawl. So I like to intertwine it all, and so it's my goal to start getting our beer once we have more of it to put out there. I'd like to definitely be hitting up like the Smoke, Smalls, Village Vanguard, Fat Cat, Blue Note, and where all my favorite music places, so that I can do these tap events there and kind of tie it all in.
If you get a 2-drink minimum, might as well be a good drink.
Yeah, damn straight. Damn straight. And then there's other places that scenes that just want to be created, and so the other things I do, I play. I don't just play saxophone. I play bass. I play bass and freestyle Mondays, and we've been playing that gig for 16 years, and that's basically another improvisatory kind of celebration where we improvise grooves in the back, and MCs kind of flow in and out on it, and it's been amazing to see MCs grow and the creativity and their lyricism come connect together and to be cohesive thoughts and execution has been amazing to do. We also do a game show format for part of it every time we do it. So we do a game show or a hip hop battle in a game show format.
Oh,
so
nice.
we'll have a wheel that we spin in the beginning that gives a topic, and then we have various games like blindfold test, C block, or today was a good day where they have to talk about what the other MC might have been doing that whole day, or then they gotta
Wow.
shower them with kindness or kind bars. So they gotta, instead of battling them, just be as nice as possible to the other person. And then once they've proven their wit and we're finally down to 2 MCs, then it's all out, just no rules.
No,
But anyway,
smart.
but this is the fun that I have, or that I like to do.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Ferment About It. You guys, you guys still doing that? Obviously, what's that like? I mean, what's your process like when you're getting into your show?
Yeah, so Ferment About It is a podcast covering all things fermented from the eyes of brewers. We're on heritageradionetwork.org. We are on episode 427 right now.
Wow.
So we've been doing it for 5 years, since 2012. Actually, the same time I got hired for 508 Gastrobreweries when we started with Heritage Radio Network. And there's another beer show on Heritage Radio Network called Beer Sessions, and but that's straight beer. We cover wine, kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, pickled vegetables, pickled hot fermented hot sauce, dosas, water kefir, milk kefir. If you can ferment it, we want to talk about it. And but the information is out there, so it's not exactly an instructional podcast. It is the stories behind the people that got into it, and there might be some recipes and some how-tos and some tips, but and we do get very geeky. I don't mean geeky. I mean we get very into. I do. We can get pretty science. We can get deep into some science talk about the how-to.
Fermentation is the thing that way.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we unabashedly do that, but it's not always that. And but we try and be as serious as we can. But our approach to it is to celebrate the people doing it, and give references to where you can do it on to find out more information online in order to execute it at home. Fermentation has been like a part of cultures all around the world for out of necessity and then just culturally and like really represent everybody's individual culture. It's amazing the diversity of flavors and celebration that is in most houses in the world, except for the United States, a common play. And I think it's crazy how intimidated people get by just the idea of fermenting at home here, and it's fermentation is you do it so that food becomes safe. Like some people get really scared of it. I mean, it's controlled. It's not controlled corrosion, but it's kind of like.
But I mean, isn't Fahrenheit even just partly because of how
Is it what?
store like Fahrenheit, using Fahrenheit instead of Celsius?
Yeah.
Like, didn't we partly do that because that was an easier way to track where you would, break your food essentially, storing it?
I don't have that answer. You want to be on Ferment about it next week?
Just rep beer today, tomorrow.
No, but I don't actually know. That's it. I don't know. But see, all this time I'm trying to get back into Celsius, and now I should just stick with Fahrenheit.
Stick with Fahrenheit.
It's ferment forward now.
Ferment forward. Yeah. But it's interesting because I think a lot of people it's kind of fear of the unknown, right? I think people are hesitant.
Well, that's true.
To try new things, and then once you try that thing, I mean, there's obstacles, obviously, but it's not so hard. I mean,
it's
just
not at
taking
all,
that step.
and it takes such little time. Like there are more home brewers in the United States than there are picklers and or to make short meat or other things, and it's so fast for that. Like it takes 8 hours to make a beer at your house, for a day, but you can make pickles in like 10 minutes.
That's true.
Then just let it sit around. Just add salt and water and vegetables. You let it go, do its thing.
Although I'm not gonna lie, if I'm getting kimchi, I want some like OG, some Korean grandmother that knows
there you go. But
how to bury it and do it right.
Well, even that doesn't take that much time.
No, that's true. That's true.
It's crazy. I mean, it's great. I say all this, but I've been too busy here making beer to be fermenting too much at home. Like, Mary and my home fermentation game has gone way down because of this project, and I think that one of our dreams is to be able to have a fermentation house or maybe a satellite branch where we're able to celebrate fermented foods of all kinds and things like that. And we do throw the fermentation festival every year. Second year in running this time. It's usually in collaboration with the New York City Brewers Guild for New York City Beer Week, where we can celebrate that, beer to some of the beer audience that are coming for New York City Beer Week. We can also celebrate and be like, hey, that's not the only thing that's fermented that kind of represents cultures around the way. So this was its second year. We did really well. We had all sorts of different fermentations, and it was really fun to celebrate all of those under one roof. And it was only the second ever fermentation festival in New York City. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think that we're going to do some pretty fun things going forward. It's just growing. So.
What I mean with the farmhouse, you're allowed to open a few other satellite spaces, right?
Correct.
So
Another one of the
you have
advantages
a chance of exploring like the more wild side, essentially, if you want to dig into that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And I do. I mean, one step at a time, of course, because we're not getting ahead of ourselves. But I want to where we're sitting right now. We want to put more fermenters, and with that needs to be sold. And if we had some satellite locations where we could do that, and some creative ways to do that, that'd be great. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not interested in opening a jazz club satellite location.
There you go. Exactly.
There you go.
If I thought it could be sustainable. So support live music, everybody.
There you go. LIC is a great neighborhood for it.
Yeah.
So question. Interestingly enough, last time you were on the show was last year's Queens Beer Week. Do you have any plans for this upcoming Queens Beer Week?
So one thing that happens during Queens Beer Week is there's unfavorable Untapped review reading and that we have at Crescent and Vine. And last year, this brewery wasn't open, so there were no unfavorable untapped reviews for me to read from. So now
Is this like
I
a
have
reading
some good
mean
stuff.
tweets kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. We just got a really good one yesterday that was like failed. It said failed Budweiser. And I was like, yes! Thank God! Hey, this guy was looking for something we don't serve.
Wow.
But yeah, pretty funny. That was for the Amarillo Pillow, which is our kind of like hoppy pilsner.
That's what he said.
He
was a
said failed Budweiser.
Really?
You just had one of those,
He
right?
wanted a Budweiser.
I had one of those.
Yeah,
I
have one
enjoyed
right
it.
here.
Yeah,
I like it.
Wow. Well, you know,
And
I
don't want it to taste like Budweiser.
I think you need more haters. I think the
Yeah.
more haters you have, the better it is. That means you're doing something good. People are taking, you need people who supporters, and you need a small amount of haters. Just for that feel, you're doing something right if some people are hating on you.
I don't disagree with that at all, because what that means is basically you're creating something with flavor that is inherently polarizing. If you made something that tasted like nothing, nobody would have anything good or bad to say about it.
Yeah,
Right.
if
And
you're gonna fail
everybody's-
at Budweiser, make it on the flavor, not on
Right.
the business side or whatever.
Right. I mean,
Just
you have
tastes nothing like a Budweiser. I think that's a compliment.
Right. Exactly.
right?
That's what I'm saying.
Is that a mean Untapped review? On that?
Just reply, thanks, man.
Well, the funny thing is he or she ended up misspelling Budweiser. Like they didn't have the D in there. It said failed Budweiser, and I couldn't comment on it because I didn't think because he's not my friend on it, and I think you can only comment or toast when you're
Yeah.
friends. But I was gonna be like failed spelling, or like failed English. I don't know.
Yeah.
But who's on Untapped comparing things to Budweiser? Like,
Right. Well,
that's crazy in
Yeah, I
itself. But
To be fair, he didn't exactly rate it too low. Like
wow,
too
okay.
low.
This person seemed a little confused. But enough about them. So
Sorry,
Go ahead.
the rest of Queens Beer Week, we haven't planned what we're doing yet. We know that we'll be there for the opening festival.
Yep.
We'll be doing a lot of stuff here in our tap room because
Yep.
our focus is celebrating stuff in our tap room. So if we can creatively kind of do some of that, we're going to. There is talks, and this is off the record, even though it's on record.
Yeah. We won't tell
No,
anybody.
don't tell anybody.
Nobody.
No, don't tell anybody. We had a really successful kind of fundraising thing for the New York City Brewers Guild back in the fall. We called it the NYC Brewed Fall Crawl.
Right.
Where the breweries here in LIC all hosted other breweries in their tap room for one night only. So you could buy like a passport, or like you could go to each, like do a walk and celebrate the whole city. And so we might work with the Brewers Guild again to do that. There's talk of it. If we can execute it, we will. And that'll be really fun.
Nice. Very nice.
Even if just a couple of us do it, it's still. And I think we're going to do it, but I'm just not sure.
I mean,
Final plans or days.
personally, as a Queens native, I love Queens Beer Week. I mean, really, for me, every week is Queens Beer Week, but I just love putting a label and saying this is Queens Beer Week, which is really awesome. Looking forward towards that. So now, as far as upcoming events, whether it's beer releases, what do you guys got going on in the immediate future for Fifth Hammer?
For Fifth Hammer, in the immediate future, next week on Wednesday, we are celebrating cheese here in the brewery. Let's Get Cheesy is the event we call it, and
Nice.
We get together with Marcelli Formaggi, and we're going to do probably some other cheese vendors in the future as well. But it's probably going to be the last Wednesday of every month where we're doing basically paired cheese plates with our beers. Andy comes in and serves. We also have Hammer Hall. So we've done 2 of them so far. I think later this month we're doing the 3rd Hammer Hall. I think we're going to talk some about off flavors. The first one was on pale ales. The second one was on yeast. But what that is, that's our humble institution of beer knowledge. And so Mary and I host it and teach it. Here in the brewery, it's $15. It comes with the pour and the samples that we do. We're going to keep that series going. We'll have different pop-ups coming in on the weekends. As far as events in town, there's the 5 Borough Craft Beer Fest. I'm sending a keg or a cask next week to Nirax up in Boston.
Nice.
We have M Wells around the block celebrating Canadian maple syrup, and so I've tinctured some of my beers with maple syrup, and they're doing a brunch thing this Sunday and the next Sunday with these maple beers. If it can be created, we want to do it, and if there's time and bandwidth to do it, we want to do it. If it celebrates all things good, people, fun, deliciousness, and life, we want to do it.
Absolutely. So I have a couple more questions before we kind of close out. But Perry, do you have any Any questions or comments for Chris?
No, I think at this point, like, a lot of the interesting things I was curious about that I heard about before, we've covered a lot of ground, so I'm good with that thus far.
Sorry for being long-winded here.
No, it's fun because, I mean, how often do you get to hear the backstory and, like, what's actually going on and, the community and industry, we're all beer lovers for a reason. It's not just the beer, it's also the community, so.
It's the people, so we have it, I didn't say this, but, up on our thing, our philosophy is beer is people. It's right up on our board.
Yes, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about. It's that connection, that community, which is awesome. So I have two more questions. One's a really basic one. Let's just get out of the way. People want to find out more about you. Where do they go? Website, Instagram? What's the best place to find more about Fifth Hammer?
Well, we're trying to get better at these things, but you can go to fifthhammerbrewing.com. But I think that most of our activity for in real-time play is through our Facebook page, Fifth Hammer, but also Fifth Hammer Beer. At Fifth Hammer Beer is our Instagram, and we definitely do a lot of promoting through that. Like,
Sure.
most of our kind of promotion stuff is there. There's not a calendar on it. Like, we're getting better at putting a calendar on our website. So fifthhammerbrewing.com is, I guess, the ultimate source. But I think between those three avenues, that's where we do it.
Okay, very cool. And now, as Perry alluded to, we did cover a lot of ground. What didn't we touch on that you feel the audience should know about you, should know about Fifth Hammer? What should they know about the vibe here? What else can you tell them that we haven't covered yet?
We're people and we like people, and we want to hear from you. The good and the bad. If there's beer that you've had, whether it's in the field or here, I definitely want to know how my product is holding up. I'm very concerned with the quality of my product. I mean, that's my job here is to deal with that. And if you're dealing with a bad experience or in the tap room, then talk to Dave.
All right.
No.
That's the buck. On the record.
Any problems or concerns? Go to Dave.
No. We're all. This is pretty utilitarian. We're a family here, and we want to do all that. I think I've stressed that enough. That's that's what I want us to be known for. I don't want anybody coming in here with their pinkies up and overthinking things unless you really want to. I mean, I do want that, and I can get deep in a conversation with you. I'm happy to have a beer conversation anytime, all the time about what the hell's going on in my beer. And if you're a home brewer and want any tips, I am not holding back anything about how I do things over here, and I want to help because the more all of us make great beer or delicious things and execute things well through great process, the better life tastes for everybody. So let's all just like dedicate. Never good enough is never good enough. It has to be excellent, and so it's a way of life.
100%, I agree.
Definitely words to live by.
Yes, and I did lie. I have one more question. What you just said kind of spurred that in my mind. Prior to 2012, Queens was kind of pretty barren. I mean, the craft beer scene in New York really wasn't much before that. I mean, there were breweries, but obviously Prohibition killed it. Blah 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 blah. But now here we are, and there's breweries opening up at rapid paces, not just in Queens, all over. But it just so happens recently, especially in Queens. What's your current day assessment of the New York craft beer scene?
It has never been better. I mean, it's amazing. I think the quality has a rising tide floats all boats. We all share information, and we all have individual experiences in our tap room, and we all have different background experiences. But we're both in like the amount of experience we have brewing and behind the wheel, and those that are a bit more experienced, we tend to be helping our constituents, up their game or talk about different practices. Like the conversation is open and none of us are holding anything back, so that camaraderie is amazing, and it's keeping the level up.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, really inspired by all of the other brewers here in New York City. I think some of the best beers in the world are being made here, but we have a diversity of styles. New Yorkers are inherently. I mean, New York is inherently diverse. Like we have the whole world in this city, and we have backgrounds from all over the place, and consequently, all these different influences and these different kind of perspectives on flavor, construction, and what people want, especially when it's coming from ourselves. So everything that's coming out is totally different. Even like just to make an IPA, you have an IPA from any one of these different people, it's going to be relatively different. I mean, we're all making our own versions of our New England style because, take some New England pride here, but it's like we have to.
No, absolutely. And honestly, like, for me personally, I've loved beer for a very long time, but the whole craft beer resurgence locally, in part, is what spurred the birth of Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. So shout out, thank you for what you do and what all the other brewers do, because again, I think it's contributing to the culture, it's contributing to kind of the community, and it's a great thing just tasting these delicious beers. And that to me is a beautiful thing, just bringing people together.
Yeah, delighting and tasting the beers. And, inebriation is not a destination point, it's a perk for those with good taste.
Yes,
Exactly.
Yes, and I love what you said earlier, keeping the dream going for people.
Yeah.
You don't want to wake them from the dream. I think that's a perfect way to end the show. We hope the dream is continuing all for our listeners. Chris, thank you so much for letting us do the show here. Thanks again for hopping back on the BTBT show. And until next time, drink local, drink fresh, repeat. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.